right, you guys, welcome to our Thursday morning virtual coffee. We're so excited to see so many new faces here. For those of you who I've never met, my name is Debbie Morrow, a very new New Mexico resident and realtor here in the great state of New Mexico, which is why I haven't been here the last 2 weeks. I was in that transition, and my business partner Ray and our other teammates Jackie and Walt kind of took the wheel and made took great care of you guys. So Ray, please introduce yourself.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Raymond Schulseth. I'm Debbie's partner in crime. I've been in and around real estate for well over 30 years at this point. Spent the first portion of my career making physical products for all sorts of different industries. And when COVID hit, I had to pivot. So I decided that I was going to go all in on real estate for the next 10 years of my life. And that's what I've been doing since. I'm based in Chicago. I have a streaming TV series, a podcast. Walt here and I are writing a bunch of books, and we have an amazing team here at Asian Impact Group that we're building. To Debbie's point about a newsletter, we are fortunate to have 177,000 of you amazing people subscribe to our newsletter, and it is a journey. So for those of you that feel like it is meaningless and goes nowhere and doesn't generate business, just give it time and keep showing up. All that being said, I have a very special guest today, my friend John Lincoln. So when COVID hit, I was kind of lost. I was trying to figure out who's sharing their screen. Jody, I'm going to stop your share. I was trying to figure out exactly what I was going to be doing next and what it looked like. And I got involved with a strengths coach, and I was introduced to John through one of my friends, and I took a strengths assessment. After I took that strengths assessment, he was kind enough to jump on with my friend Catherine and break me down without ever meeting me on YouTube. And I'll drop that video here. It was a pretty cool process. But today we're going to talk about strengths, and we're going to talk about how to leverage them in your business, because what I learned 4 years ago and I've been diving deeper and working on since has been a game changer for how I can show up for everybody, including myself. With all that being said, John, I would love to pass you the mic, introduce yourself, and then we're going to get into it.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I'm really excited to be here. My name's John Lincoln. I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, just adjacent to the Western North Carolina mountains that are in bad, bad shape. If anything you can do to help, be aware, spread the word. It's decimated. I've never it. I can't. I don't want to bog things down, but it's bad. But I'm thrilled to be here. Ray and I have had multiple conversations about this. I've been doing this work, strengths work, for about 15 years professionally, and it it is a it can be a game changer for people, because I think most of us go through life, when we're asked who we are, we'll fumble around trying to describe ourselves, and oftentimes describe what we're not as much as we describe what we are, and we use lots and lots of words. Well, there are personality assessments out there, ranging from the ones you do online that are free, that are really quick, that might or might not be sort of directionally correct, to those that are more sophisticated. This one by Gallup, called Clifton Strengths, formerly known as StrengthsFinder, I find to be the most powerful of all them, because it is the one that is relevant to you in every situation you are in, because it is you. And basically what it does, you take an assessment, 177 pairings of statements, you respond to those, how you feel about those. You are given a report as a result of that, that describes 34 ways of being, 34 talents, and we'll talk about those in just a moment. But it's really based on brain wiring, and we're all different in that regard. We may share similar traits, but we're all different. You encounter this every day, and I think this is so important for customer-facing folks who deal with people, because we tend to behave the way we do, right? And we assume other people understand that, but they don't. and different people are different. And so where people come from is a combination of things. It's based on their brain wiring, but it's also based on our life experience and the way that influences that. Well, that's a lot of madness that can get started. And so what I found is that it's really helpful for folks who are in customer facing roles, who interact with people, to understand themselves first. There's a sign above me that says you can't be authentic if you don't know who you are, and that's kind of obvious, right? But when you work with people, you know that the fundamental attribute of building a relationship is trust. So it is instilling a sense of trust in another person, and it's up to the other person to feel that. The way people feel that is when you are speaking as you, as an authentic person, because that's how we relate. So storytelling, which is something I do as well, is all about creating that moment of intimacy with other people that's relatable, right? And you find that certain people really respond to the relationship part of your interactions, and other people respond to the dollars and cents. And you kind of go, well, how do I know and why? And which do I gravitate toward, for example? Where am I sort of most comfortable, and why? And why? And why is it that in certain relationships, some things drive me crazy, and I just need to kind of figure that out and manage that? And why do others not? Why do other things just seem to come really easily to me, and time disappears? I don't make as many mistakes. When we're aligned to who we are, to our talents, the way we're wired, life improves because it takes less effort. It's all about brain wiring. We have more neural pathways in certain parts of our brain and more synapses, which are the connection points of those neural pathways, um, in different ways as people. And the way we motivate ourselves, the way we motivate others, the way we build relationships, and the way we think are all driven by these neural pathways. And again, they're all unique to us. Um, Debbie or Ray, do you have the deck available to put up?
I do,
And
absolutely.
I'm curious, by a show of hands, if people, you don't have to wave the hand on the system, but just visually, if you're available. Has anyone taken the assessment, strengths assessment? Okay, I see Danny. I see Therese. Is it Teresa or
Therese, you're right.
Therese? Hi. Good, good. So you have an idea of what I'm talking about. Um, I'm going to go quickly through some of this information, and then we're going to talk about Ray as an example, and that'll be fairly quick. So I mentioned that there are 34 ways of being that this tool identifies. If you were to take all 34 of those and do a permutation calculation on that, which is when you consider every possible combination of all 34 of those talents. Can you go to the next one? That's the number. That's the number of potential possibility combinations of your talents. Can you do it again? That's 295 undecillion. That number has 12 commas and 39 digits in it. That is huge. That is huge. The population of the world is roughly 8 billion people, which is really only what, 10 characters out of that number. You will never meet another person wired the way you are, ever. It's just not possible. In all the years I've been doing this work and all the coaches I've spoken with, the most uh, in common number of talents amongst anyone I've ever seen and others have ever seen was four in the top five. And then there was so much difference based on that other talent that was not the same and their life experience that they were very different people. Certain things about them feel familiar, but others don't. 295 undecillion. Do you think there's room for miscommunication, misunderstanding, and all those kinds of things when that's how unique we are? Well, yeah, there is. Can you go to the next one? And I mentioned that's just your brain wiring and the way we're unique in our talent mix. But then we all also have all this stuff we learn along the way, our life experience. So the rules that we learn about and adopt or don't, our own lack of knowledge and the knowledge we have. So our ignorance, we all are ignorant about. There's so much to know, right? And the expectations that we put on ourselves or others put on us, and our belief systems, our values, those are all unique to us, and those are filters through which we look at the world. On top of the way we go about that, which is our natural ways of being. So, yeah, there's a lot of opportunity for misunderstanding. I would postulate that although economics play into everything and societal hierarchy plays into everything, there's also I have seen through virtually every team I've ever worked with, every person I've ever worked with, conflict arises between talents that don't understand each other. It's just human nature. Can we go on to the next one? I'm going to use, so these are three observations that I think are stumbling blocks for us. First is everyone thinks the same way we do. We tend to think that when we're younger, because if we had a thought, other people must have had that thought. They must think it the same way. And then we find out, maybe we get in a relationship, or maybe we get married, we start dating somebody, and they do something that just blows us away in a quizzical sort of way. We don't understand where that comes from. So we have to be cautious to know that not everybody thinks the same way we do. You know that sort of intrinsically, but it's amazing how often we wonder why people think the way they do when we think a different way. Because how could they not see it the way we do, right? Second one is we tend to think that everyone has the same talents we do, especially when we're younger. Just that Billy got more than I did, or Anne is better at this than I am. So we tend to see in them what we don't have, and we judge ourselves. So I call it the comparison trap. It doesn't really serve us because it makes us feel bad oftentimes. And then the third thing is when someone says something to us, they're talking about us. Boy, I'll tell you, this one everyone experiences at some point in their lives, where we get that criticism from someone, or someone says something to us and we react and we think that there's something about us. But when we look at the comment that the person made, and maybe look at the person with a bit more intention, we see that it's really who they are. They chose to say that because of who they are. Someone else would likely not have said that same thing. So it's not necessarily about us. So let's not take it personally when people criticize us as well, because it doesn't really do any good. All this stuff is hard. This is hard. This is mindfulness work that we need to be aware of. And you experience this as you interact with people, I'm sure. Can you go to the next one? So what's the difference between talents and strengths? Because we use these terms, so we'll go through these quickly. So the tool itself in Gallup, Clifton Strengths, identifies 34 talent themes. So what is a talent? I consider it kind of like your tool belt around your waist that has all of the tools, 34 tools that you can use, except that some of them are behind your back and really hard to reach, and maybe you can't even reach them. Some are in the front, and either if you're right-handed or you're left-handed, you grab for some of them more frequently than others. Those would be your top talents, those natural ways of being. And the description we use is it's a naturally recurring pattern of thought, feeling, or behavior that can be productively applied. So it's your potential. It is your potential. Versus or enhanced to become the next one, please. A strength. So a strength, as we define it, is consistent, near perfect performance in an activity you love doing. It's when time disappears, when you're doing that kind of stuff. So I'd be willing to wager that there are people on this call, probably a third of you, who love lists. And you just love to check things off lists. You have lists about lists, probably. Sometimes when you do things that aren't on the list, you add them to the list to check them off, right? I mean, I know about a third of you, based on statistics, 33 million people have taken the assessment. That's a lot of people. Um, that that is something you love to do. You go on vacation, you create a whole list of things you want to get done. You drive your family crazy sometimes. They just want to lay on the beach and drink a margarita, and you do too, but you want to check it off the list because you want to go do the next thing and the next thing, right? That's internal wiring. It makes you want to go do that. And you love doing it. And when you're really in your zone, you check all those things off, you feel really good at the end of the day. And it's very frustrating when you can't complete them. If you're let's say, a strategic thinker, you are someone who thinks really quickly. It makes you feel really good when you can get just enough information to know what you need to do because you know where you're going. And in the absence of not knowing where you're going, it will drive you crazy. People who are strategic thinkers have to know where they're going because if you don't know where you're going, you can't get there. But if you're not a strategic thinker, if you're a deeper thinker, you may want to analyze and review and mull over and reflect on what's happening. So you go deeper and you bring more thinking to the table, potentially, than a strategic thinker, because strategic thinkers move really quickly. So it's all about leaning into your natural ways of being. And the way you can do that is by finding out what those are. So let's go to the next one. So talent plus skills plus knowledge plus use. So practice yields a strength. And that's what we want to, that's really what we as people benefit most from. We do it, we do it sort of haphazardly, I would say, for most people because we don't understand this stuff. And so we launch into things, we try it. I call it the pinball effect. It's like you pull the pinball, the little lever, and you shoot yourself out and you're a pinball and you're banging into things. And eventually you find out that certain things hurt your head, ouch, right? So then you don't do those anymore. And sometimes you go tilt. Sometimes you hit all the things and it's like, yay, the best thing in the world, right? When you're in your talent, aligned to your talent, you are scoring really high as a person. Everything flows more smoothly for you. Next one. So this is Ray. So we have 34 talents in the strengths tool that are identified, and they're weighted from the most intense, the most prevalent, in this case in Ray, to the least prevalent. And when I say least prevalent, I mean 34 is just not there. Even if it's the tiniest tool on your tool belt in the back that you just can't reach, it's just not there. But other people have that. I want you to remember that. Just because you don't have it doesn't mean other people don't. And the fact that they do can be really helpful to you when you don't. So in Ray's case, I'm going to do this really quickly. So Ray has relator as his number one. It's not realtor. I just wanted to point that out. On this group especially, I want to point that out. But relator. So Ray goes very deep in relationships, a handful of them, a small circle of trusted others. That relationships for Ray are built on trust first and foremost, and they go deep. They don't go broad. Now he can play in across lots of different people, but it's probably taxing to Ray to do that for too long. He's going to need to take a nap and recharge himself to allow himself to get there. But relators go very deep. So those of you who have relator in your top 5, top 10 talents are people who are all about relationships. And relationships are built on trust. And if somebody betrays you, you can drop them like the hot potato. And people wonder about that because you're such a nice person and they all come to you and they tell you secrets and all kinds of things that you didn't know you needed to know, and you're not sure you did need to know, but they tell you those, and you're kind of like, why did you tell me that? Well, it's because you give off an aura of trust. That's why, that you're not going to go blab about what they've said. So a second one is the one that I get a kick out of because I've interacted with Ray a number of times. Focus is exactly what it says. It is, I'm going to get from point A to point B. Nothing's going to get in my way. I'm going to get there. I have an itch to get it done. I'm going to go do it. Damn the torpedoes. Get out of my way. I'm gone. It has nothing to do with those relationships that the relator does. Nothing to do with that because it's internal motivation. So Ray could be perceived sometimes as intense, potentially, Ray. I don't know whether anyone's ever used that word for you to describe you, but I'd be willing to wager somebody has at some point because he he actually absolutely will put blinders on to get to what needs to happen when he's using his focus. That can be incredibly powerful because he gets a lot of stuff done. The third one he has, and what I want to say too about these is that we don't know the actual percentage. Like say on a scale of 100, each one could be 100. Ray's relator may be 99 or 100 in him. But his, for example, his third one, futuristic, might be 96, 97, something like that. But it's way up there in terms of intensity. Futuristic. One of the other things I noticed about Ray is he's an entrepreneur. He builds businesses, he builds concepts, he offers concepts, lots and lots of them, because in his mind's eye, he can see what's possible, what that shining city on the hill looks like. The challenge is that that's a long way away, and there are steps that need to be built toward that, right? So he's a visionary. And so he will constantly be coming up with what's possible. So finding ways to describe that, Ray, is probably the challenge, right? Sometimes is how do you bring people along toward that shining city on the hill? How do you do that? You can paint the picture of it, but most people, believe it or not, do not have futuristic. It's one of the least prevalent, and so it's misunderstood. So people can't keep up sometimes. So it's so like anything else, any other talent, any other thing we do, communication is really important. Figuring out ways how to say things that engage people, right? It's even more important when you're a visionary. Even more important. So those of you who are entrepreneurs, likely some of you have futuristic somewhere in your top mix of talent because you tend to see what is possible. Fourth one, and I'm just going to do the top 5 quickly here, developer. So Ray is a nurturer. Ray sees what's possible and is futuristic, but he also sees potential in people, unique potential, what's unique to you. So when he talks to you, he's going to tease out and encourage you with just the right words for you because he sees you, he senses that. That is what developer is about. Developer folks who are developer oftentimes teachers or they're coaches, those kinds of things, because they take people under their wing because they know exactly the right thing to say at the right time that gets the person to the next better place. And then activator. So as we talked about a minute ago, Ray is focused. So he likes to get going, blinders on, get going, focus, get from point A to point B. Then he also has the itch to get started right now. And that's what activator is. Activator is it activates. And so it's, I have a partner, my number 5 is also activator. And my partner calls me Mr. Squirrel because sometimes I just like to start a whole bunch of different things. Unlike Ray, unlike those of you who have potentially achiever, for example, that's the most common of all the talents where you check off things on the list. Um, I start stuff, but I don't necessarily finish it. It's not the finishing that gratifies me. It's the getting going that gratifies me. So what's that mean? You know, what does that mean? If we just look at Ray's top 5, you know, sort of what does that mean? Well, Ray is a person who trusts very deeply, and is all about deep relationships. He's going to get a lot of stuff started and done and finish across the finish line toward building toward that future, and nurturing people to go along the path with him. And he wants to get going right now. So he's going to have lots of energy to do that. So when you think about that, that presents lots of opportunities for Ray just in his top 5. And there are even more below that, obviously. Your top 10 are really the most prevalent in you. And so understanding that can be really helpful. So what I would say about Ray is sometimes when you have this mix, because you see what's possible, you want to help people get there, you're big on deep relationships, and you want to get going, sometimes it's hard to decide what you want to get going on because there's so many options, so many possibilities. So I'd be willing to wager that Ray, and we've had this conversation before, trying to decide what you want to do most can be oftentimes hard. So people who have a mix of talents where you're what we would consider to be very well-rounded in terms of your capabilities sometimes struggle to figure out what you want to do and how you want to do it. because there's just so many options. So I would say a big part of all this work is grant yourself some grace, because the reality is when you find what that thing is, after practicing and trying, when you find that thing, you will excel far beyond your expectations, far beyond. And that's just Ray's mix from what I see. Does anybody sort of nod your heads about my description of Ray there?
100%. I'm not even going to nod my head. I'm going to take myself off mute and say, this is Ray to a T. And it is one of the reasons that Ray and I are business partners, right? Like he's an amazing person to have as a business partner because of all those things that you said.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so, wouldn't it be really helpful to know that about somebody as you're beginning to work with them? And when I say that, first thing I'm referring to are the people you directly work with, your partners, if you have teammate members, team folks on your team. It's really helpful to understand this so that we don't second guess and misstep with that. It makes the path of understanding the relationship that we have and the potential for the relationship much clearer, because we're all, like I said, we're all different. We can't know. I mean, I can't tell you, I've been a leader forever in the corporate world. And there's so many times I've wished that I could crawl in somebody's brain and see what they're seeing so that I could understand, because I just don't understand why they're thinking the thing they're thinking, except that I have a tool that I use, and this is it, that helps me understand people. And this is the work that I do with individuals and with teams. And the reason I think this is relevant it's relevant to any human being because it helps you understand who you are, but it's also really relevant for understanding how other people are. Because when we look, I'm going to put you on the spot again, Ray, with your bottom 5 talent. So if you look over to the right under that navigate column, it says context is number 30, restorative 31, 32 is woo, 33 harmony, 34 includer. So first thing I notice is Ray is not someone who's going to dwell on the past, because context is all about the past. Explaining to Ray why things are the way they are is probably going to cause him to fidget and tap and like want to like climb out of his skin, because it doesn't matter. What he sees is what's possible. I mean, it's important to know what happened in the past, but that's not the way Ray is wired. He's much more wired around the future. It's right in his top 5, right? So there's that. But sometimes the past is really important, right? So Ray's tendency is not going to be to focus on the past, but there are many of you on this call and in this world who do focus on the past. You do have context. You do enjoy knowing the steps that were taken to get to a place, because if you don't understand that, the mistakes that have been made in the past will happen again, right? If you don't do it well. That's just the truth. That is something Ray, excuse me, can rely on other people who have context to help him with, to fill out his perspective. Ray, does that make sense?
100%. I just couldn't dial my wife fast enough to get her on speakerphone so she could hear this conversation that we just had.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, Debbie's recording it, Ray, so you can just email it to her
I'm going to
later.
pull this clip out and throw it on TikTok.
Yeah. The other one that stands out for me is harmony. So harmony is all about common ground, finding common ground, reducing tension. So people who have harmony in their top mix of talent don't like conflict. And it may be because it makes them uncomfortable, but it also sometimes is about being a waste of time. If we know that we agree on this thing, why don't we go do that thing? Why do we worry about all the stuff we don't agree on? Right? If we're trying to get something done and we agree on this thing, let's go do that. And so people with harmony tend to find common ground between disparate viewpoints. Your crazy uncle who's going on at the Thanksgiving dinner table, and then your cousin who's she's very environmentally conscious, and they're going at it like, probably pull them both apart and talk to them individually. A person with harmony would. Ray is not that person who's going to do that. Ray doesn't mind conflict. Conflict actually creates a spark of opportunity, probably for Ray. So he's going to be more direct. than a person with harmony might be. So if you have harmony, you're going to be that person. Wouldn't that be helpful to know if you're working with, let's say you're in residential real estate, you're working with a couple, you and they're going at one another. Wouldn't it be helpful to know that you have harmony and that you can actually lean into being that moderator, that mediator between them? Because you're going to find common ground. You have to do that. So it really depends on who you are and the people that you work with. And the way to better understand that is to understand yourself so that you can understand others as well and interact more effectively. Is that making, am I making sense? And Debbie, time check me on this. I see a 10:36.
Yeah, well, we're kind of right on time. Do you have more
Well, let's go one more
present?
slide. Let's see.
Okay.
Okay, so this is how you can reach me. So corefocusconsulting.net, John at corefocusconsulting.net. If you'd like to do an individual, I do individual work with people. It's usually about 3 sessions with people going through this and then working with you depending on your desired goals. And then the other is also working with teams of people, which is amazing, amazing work. But one more, one more forward, please. Yeah. And so if you have your results from Gallup, you can go to corefocusconsulting.net/top 5. If you have your top 5 results, go there. This is a free tool that I developed. When you get to the page, it's going to be for financial advisors because I just did it for a group of financial advisors. So it's interesting that the person mentioned that she was a financial advisor as well. But at any rate, it's very, what this does is takes your top 5 talents from the assessment and creates a profile for you so that it summarizes, and it's really, really powerful, and it's free. So feel free to do that. I think this saying, you can't be authentic if you don't know who you are, is really relevant. And I think that the greater understanding we have about what our natural gifts are, our ways of being, the more we can lean into that, the more joy and passion we have in this world, and the more we can do effectively. And that's really the end game. It's to be fulfilled. We want to be fulfilled in our lives, right? We want time to not be the master of us, right? We want to feel like we can put all of ourselves into what we do and the relationships that we have. And there is a way to better understand that. So I appreciate your time.
I love it. Thank you, John. And guys, I just want to, before we go into breakout rooms and all that stuff, I want to say something that we're all born into the environments that we landed in with our parents, our families, whatever the situation may be, good, bad, and different. But we're programmed based on the environment that we're land on. And those beliefs are who we think we are. And that's what we go through life with. So for me, what was game changing was to realize that personality isn't permanent and that I can change who I'm being or who I want to be based upon understanding what my innate, God-given, universe-given strengths are out of the box. And for me, it's really a gift. It is a very generous gift John has given me over the last 4 years. And the ability to dissect, hey, where should I be spending my time? And the better I get about understanding myself and learning about my strengths, and I focus on that being the 20% of effort I put in to get 80% of my results, the easier my life is, the easier my relationships are, the easier it is to communicate with people, the easier it is to choose who I want to be partnered and surrounded by, and the easier it is to choose how I generate leads, how I market, how I show up for people, because it becomes less work. Not that I'm looking to not work, but it becomes less work because it's easier. There's less resistance, right? So if anybody does anything, invest in taking the strengths assessment and start doing that work. But know it's going to take time. You spent however many years old you are becoming you today. It's going to take a minute to figure out how to learn and adjust and make changes and integrate this into your life.
Yeah, I always say if you could improve your your sort of mental state, your sense of passion and happiness by 10%, just 10%, right? How many hours are there in a week? If you could get 10% more joy out of that, that's a small amount, but it builds because then it pervades everything else. It is a muscle. I mean, being ourselves is kind of like developing a muscle. And this gives you insight into which muscles you have. So
Excellent. So, John, I
love
have a
it.
question before we kind of go into breakout rooms. How can our agents here on the call use this to work better with their clients?
Yeah.
And is there kind of an abbreviated but still useful tool for them to send their clients and say, take this
Oh, yeah.
like quick assessment so that we can, so that I make sure that I'm working with you the best way I can.
Yeah, this is always the challenge. Where I would start is with you as the agent. And so if you learn about yourself, as you learn this stuff, you begin to see other people differently. You begin to break down that idea that, people are you're second guessing how other people are. You know, I have worked with, vendors and clients and things, and I before I work with them, I ask them to take the assessment. But I've got a business relationship that I'm paying them. So versus when I have clients, obviously my clients take the assessment because that's what I do. But what I would say is, if in the absence of giving them something, there are other free assessments. Stand Out is another one that's free, that's directionally useful. You can understand that a bit more about people. So I might recommend that. Um, but really, it gives you eyes to be more mindful of what you're observing in your clients. It helps you understand sort of where they're coming from, because the more you learn about the ways people can be, you begin to pick up on signals about how they are rather than kind of guessing at it. That is what I would say, and it becomes extremely effective for you because it gives you almost like a radar screen. When you begin to see people, you begin to kind of notice their behaviors and certain things they do that will give you insight into who they are. I mean, you do that every day anyway. This just gives you I think, a finer radar screen, even in the absence of having their specific data. Does that make sense?
It does, yes. Thank you. Okay, guys, John, do you have a icebreaker question that you would like to um, share with our, for us to use in our first breakout room?
Icebreaker question. Yeah. Tell, think of a time, think of a time when you misinterpreted a person, when you thought one thing and found out something about them after spending a little bit of time. Think of just one example of someone you saw, made sort of an estimate about or an assessment of, and found out was something completely different. This happens to everybody, and that's part of this work is kind of having more information about that. How's that?
Excellent. That's perfect. I'm looking at these breakout rooms and okay, if everybody has at least 3 people in the breakout, actually 4, I think so I'm going to open these up. We'll have 10 minutes and you'll answer the icebreaker question. You'll remember a time like John just described, and then, share with each other what you're doing in your business, where you are. We're building relationships in these breakout rooms. After 10 minutes, we'll come back and see if we can get another short one in. So here we go. Okay, so everyone should be coming back now. I would love to hear from you guys. Anything really cool that you learned in your breakout room?
I learned don't blame yourself when other people are underestimating you.
Ooh, love that. You know what's funny is I love to be underestimated because I like to prove people wrong. I don't know what that says about my Clifton strengths and where John went, but anyone else learn something really cool?
Debbie,
Yes?
I don't know if I've learned something new, but I wanted to emphasize what I learned. We had two people in the breakout room, Jeff, Mike Sell and his wife, wonderful people. But there was another person, Sue, who just is a natural giver, natural positive blessing vibration. And when you're like that, it doesn't matter what you do. They just come to you. The universe is it happens that way. So my learning point is this. Sometimes we try very hard. Sometimes we push. Sometimes we go the extra mile. But when we become who we really are, which I guess is a sort of part for what we listened to this morning, and we just vibrate love, respect, appreciation for everything we have, people feel it, and they either want to buy a sandwich from you when you get into a conversation, or you vibrate people to you. And Sue has cornered that in this universe.
Excellent. Love that. Thank you, WH. So Ray, I'm going to turn it back over to you to wrap it up and thank John for being here.
I love it. Yeah. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, John, for joining us today and all your expertise and all of your years of figuring this stuff out. I know for me, it's been a game changer. Guys, in the chat, I will drop it again right now. There are 3 options. You have the paid Clifton assessment, which is about $50. You have a standout assessment, which is free. It is not the same, but similar and still very useful and a great place to get started. And then there's the Core 5, which is what John created for Core Focus. John, the last thing I would ask you is, if people take one thing away from today, what should that be?
That when you have a better understanding of how you naturally are, you can lean into that because that's the way you are, and that people respond in kind to that.
I love it.
It's all energy. It's all energy. I don't want to get too woo-woo, but it is. It's all energy.
I love it. Thank you, John. You guys, I'm going to drop a copy of the chat so you can make sure and grab links. That's uploading right now. You can literally just download it. Okay, so grab that. And that's it. We'll give you your day back. Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody, for being here. The replay will be on YouTube within 24 hours. And you can just go to our YouTube channel, search Debbie Morrow or Agent Impact Group, and you'll find it.
Thank you.
May I make a quick announcement?
Of course.
I was talking to a gentleman from Canada by the name of Stephen Jones. If you can hear me, Stephen, can you put your contact information into the chat because we got cut off? And then you guys need to show them how to save the chat because he was on his phone.
So once you put your contact information in the chat, if you are on your phone, so like I didn't do a very good job of housekeeping stuff today. I didn't tell everybody this. And it's 9 o'clock straight up, so I'll try to be quick. Danny is our official chat sender outer, and he's on here somewhere. I saw him. There he is.
Right.
So if you have your contact information in the chat and you are on your phone and cannot download it, please let Danny know that you need it and he will send it to you because he has that title. He's gotten it from being here over the years of chat sender outer.
Yes, that's right.
No,
Make
Debbie,
sure
we're
your
calling
emails.
we're calling him the chat master.
Oh, okay.
The chat.
And since there's so many Dannys, what is Danny's last name?
Leung, Leung.
Thank
I
you.
love Danny changed his name to the Chat Master. I love it. You guys, it's amazing. Thank you all for being here. Everyone, hopefully you got your information in the chat and you enjoyed what we did here today, and we'll be back next week. All of you first timers, we want to see you again.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks,
Guys,
everybody.
too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
One.